Hi there. I don't know exactly what you're feeling right now, but if you've made it to this moment, something inside you might be stirring, maybe even hurting. It could be that sense of heaviness, like the weight of the world has found its way into your chest. Days blend into each other, and no matter how hard you try, it feels impossible to keep up. Or maybe it's that strange numbness, as if everything is muted, like life is unfolding in grayscale while others seem to thrive in vivid color. You're moving, yes, but it feels like a relentless race on a path that doesn't seem to fit you. Opening up about these feelings isn't easy. We convince ourselves that no one will truly understand, or worse, that they'll see us as weak. But if that's something holding you back, let me reassure you, there's no judgment here. It's okay to feel lost, tired, or even unsure of what you need. Maybe you're searching for answers, relief, or just someone to sit with you in the quiet. If so, I want you to know I'm here. Let's take this step together, one thought at a time. Have you ever felt a kind of fatigue that's not just physical? A tiredness that seems to seep into your soul, leaving you heavy and hollow at the same time. It's that kind of exhaustion that words fail to describe. Your mind feels overloaded, yet strangely empty, a paradox that can leave you feeling even more alone. Think about your routine for a moment. The alarm sounds. You get up, go through the motions of the day, and before you know it, it's night again. Yet beneath it all, there's a nagging sense that you're always falling behind. Like no amount of effort will ever be enough. It's not just your body that's worn out. It's your spirit, your will to move forward. What's surprising is how common this feeling is, even if no one talks about it. Maybe it's the colleague who's always busy, but secretly on the edge, or the friend who laughs but avoids sharing how they're truly feeling. This kind of emotional exhaustion hides in plain sight. It's like a shadow following countless people, unspoken and unseen. And here's something strange to consider. We live in a world that celebrates burnout. Overworking is praised as dedication, and being always available is seen as commitment. But in chasing these ideals, we rarely pause to ask ourselves, where do we belong in this picture? When was the last time you stopped? Not out of guilt, but simply because you deserved it. This kind of deep exhaustion isn't just about packed schedules or endless responsibilities. It's the result of a slow disconnection, a process that often goes unnoticed. We push ourselves harder when we can't meet every expectation, trying to do more, to be more, until life itself feels like a checklist. And in the midst of it all, we forget what once made us feel alive. Perhaps the most isolating part of this experience is the belief that it's just you. But take a moment to look around. How many others are carrying this same invisible burden, pretending everything is fine? And what if, just for a moment, you could set that weight down? What might change if you stopped to truly see it, rather than just bear it? Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to say no somewhere along the way? Many of us were taught to ignore our limits, as if admitting to exhaustion was a kind of failure. We take on more, stretch ourselves thinner, and give up precious moments of rest, all to avoid letting others down. But in doing so, we end up betraying ourselves. This struggle often comes from the belief that success is tied to constant motion, that stopping means losing. But does it really? We've been conditioned to think that only those who are always productive have value, and in trying to meet those expectations, we overlook the signals our body and mind are desperately sending: the persistent headaches, the racing heart, the forgetfulness that seems to come out of nowhere. Brené Brown, whose work on vulnerability has touched millions, once said, "The courage to be imperfect is what connects us to our humanity." Yet, so many of us are afraid to show that we're human. We'd rather push ourselves to the brink than admit we can't do it all. There's this voice inside whispering, "If you slow down, they'll think you're weak." But what if true strength lies in something entirely different? When was the last time you allowed yourself to rest, without guilt or a need to justify it? If you can't remember, it might be time to reconsider. Honoring your limits isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of care. Learning to listen to your body, to your mind, is a skill many of us have forgotten but can always relearn. Have you ever felt guilty for simply pausing? It's strange how rest, something so essential, feels almost forbidden, like it must be earned or excused, in a world that values productivity above all else. Even a moment of stillness can make us feel like we're failing. This creates a relentless cycle. The pressure to do more, achieve more, and be more never ends, no matter how much we accomplish. It never feels enough. And when we finally stop, whether by choice or sheer exhaustion, the guilt creeps in. I should be doing something, it whispers, pushing us back into motion, despite the weariness. It's a loop that leaves no space for true recovery. We live in a system that prizes action over presence, efficiency over well-being, meetings that could have been emails, endless to-do lists, and the need to prove our worth. It's as if we're expected to function like machines. But the truth is, we're not. And pretending we are only pushes us closer to burnout. So, why does this guilt persist? It's often rooted in years of conditioning, in messages that taught us to measure ourselves by how much we produce rather than who we are. But what if we flipped that script? What if rest wasn't something to resist, but something essential, a foundation for everything else in life? Imagine a life where rest wasn't a luxury, but a necessity, where you allowed yourself to pause, not because all your tasks were done, but because you deserved it. Shifting your perspective doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with small changes. Taking a breath, saying no when you need to, and choosing moments of stillness. Over time, rest can become a natural part of your rhythm, not a guilty exception. How might it feel to let yourself rest fully, without the weight of guilt? To embrace the idea that your worth isn't tied to how much you accomplish, but to the simple fact that you exist. These small shifts in how you view rest could open the door to a life that feels lighter, even in the hardest times. Have you ever felt like you're carrying the weight of countless emotions, but can't pinpoint any of them? It's a paradoxical emptiness. A silence so loud it drowns out everything else. Emotional exhaustion has a way of amplifying this void, making it feel like an echo chamber where your own thoughts keep circling back, unresolved and relentless. This emptiness, though, isn't the absence of feeling. It's the overwhelming presence of everything we've been avoiding. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, described despair as what happens when we lose touch with ourselves. And isn't that what this feels like? In the rush to meet expectations, to solve problems, and to stay busy, we often neglect the quiet voice within us, the one asking to be heard. It's possible to feel both restless and drained at the same time. You want to stop, yet sitting still feels unbearable. You crave rest. But when you finally find a moment, it feels empty or disconnected. Imagine picking up a favorite book, only to realize you can't focus on a single line. It's not laziness or lack of will. It's the exhaustion of being disconnected from yourself. But as uncomfortable as this emptiness can be, it also holds an opportunity. It asks us to pause and pay attention to what we've been avoiding. What are the thoughts or emotions you've been pushing aside? Though it may feel difficult, facing this question could reveal what truly matters. What happens when you stop, not to escape or distract yourself, but to really listen, instead of trying to fill the emptiness? What if you let it simply be for a while? You might discover that the space you feared isn't as lonely as it seemed. In fact, it could be the starting point for something new. A place where you can rebuild, piece by piece sometimes. It's not life itself that needs to change, but how we choose to see it. We often think happiness comes from major changes, a new job, an achievement, or a drastic shift. But what if it's more about perspective, like turning a kaleidoscope, where the same fragments of glass form something beautiful, just by shifting how you look at them? Changing your perspective doesn't mean ignoring the struggles or pretending everything is fine. Instead, it's about noticing what's already there with fresh eyes. Think of an ordinary day, the traffic, the endless tasks, the routine that feels so predictable. But even in those moments, there's potential for something different. The sunlight filtering through the trees during a commute, a kind word from a stranger, or even the warmth of your favorite drink. Sometimes, the smallest details can transform how we experience life. Rumi, the Sufi poet, once said, "Beyond the ideas of right and wrong, There is a field. I'll meet you there. Maybe finding that field means looking past the expectations and demands of daily life to a space where you can simply breathe. This shift doesn't have to be grand. It starts with recognizing the little things, the laughter of someone you care about, the sound of rain tapping against the window, or the smell of freshly brewed coffee. These moments may seem insignificant, but they ground us in the present and remind us that joy doesn't have to come from extraordinary events. Think about a small moment that recently brought you a bit of joy. Perhaps it was completing a simple task, like trying a new recipe or organizing a drawer. These moments don't change the world, but they can change how we feel within it. I remember once following a tutorial to bake something new. It wasn't just about the result, but about proving to myself that I could still find joy in small accomplishments. These tiny moments, like stars scattered across a dark sky, can light up our days in unexpected ways. They don't erase the challenges, but they offer glimpses of something softer, something that reminds us we're still connected to the world around us. So why not start with something simple? Listen to your favorite song without doing anything else. Write down one thing that made you smile today, even if it was fleeting. Take a moment to just breathe, letting go of the rush for just a little while. These small acts are reminders that even when life feels heavy, there's still something to hold on to. If you've stayed with me this far, I want you to know something important. You're not alone, even in moments that feel hollow or overwhelming. There's someone here who cares. I may not have all the answers, but I can remind you of this. You are seen, even when it feels like no one notices. I understand what it's like to carry emotions that seem too heavy to share, to feel as though no one could possibly understand. I've been there, and truthfully, I still face those moments sometimes. But one thing I've learned is that sharing the weight, even in the smallest ways, makes a difference. Just speaking it aloud or writing it down can create a bit of space in the heaviness. That's why I want to encourage you. If you feel even the tiniest shift, if something I've said resonates, or if you find yourself thinking differently, don't keep it to yourself. Come back, share it, even if it's just to say, I'm still here. Each connection we make, even across a screen, creates a reminder that none of us are invisible. Life doesn't always provide the clarity we wish for, but that doesn't mean we have to face it all alone. There's always someone willing to listen, even in the silence. So take a breath, let these words sit with you, and remember, your feelings matter. You matter. If a close friend came to you, worn out and doubting themselves, how would you respond? Chances are, you'd reassure them, offer them kindness, and remind them that they've done their best. Yet, for some reason, it's so much harder to extend that same compassion to ourselves. We're taught to push ourselves relentlessly, mistaking perfectionism for motivation. But the truth is, self-compassion isn't about giving up. It's about meeting yourself where you are, with honesty and care. As Carl Rogers once said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. It's in that space of acceptance that real transformation begins. Self-compassion doesn't mean lowering your standards or ignoring your responsibilities. Instead, it's about shifting the way you respond to yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of harsh criticism, ask, what can I learn from this? When you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself, I did what I could today, and that's enough. These small moments of understanding can become seeds of healing, planting resilience where there was once only self-doubt. Here's a simple exercise to try. Stand in front of a mirror and take a moment to look at yourself, not just the surface, but the person standing there with all their experiences, strengths, and struggles. Tell yourself, you're human, and that's okay. You deserve kindness. It might feel awkward at first, but over time, these words can remind you of something we often forget, that you're worthy of care, even from yourself. Compassion is one of the most human responses to pain, and it starts with allowing yourself to feel it without judgment. Instead of pulling away from your emotions, try leaning into them with curiosity. That's where real strength lies. Not in denying your humanity, but in embracing it, flaws and all. It's okay to feel fragile. In fact, even the strongest among us have days where everything feels too heavy. just the fact that you're here. Reading these words says more about your resilience than you might realize. Sometimes, existing is an act of courage in itself. Life is often unpredictable, like walking a winding path with no map. Some days are easier, while others feel impossible. But each step forward, no matter how slow, brings you closer to understanding yourself and the world around you. It's okay if today feels difficult. Tomorrow may not be perfect, but it will be different. And in that difference, there's always the possibility of something new. Remember? You don't have to carry everything on your own. There's no rule that says you must shoulder every burden in silence. The beauty of life isn't in its perfection, but in the moments we allow ourselves to pause, to breathe, and to begin again. However imperfectly, take a moment to let this sink in. It's okay to feel everything, or even nothing at all. It's okay to take a break, to give yourself permission to simply be. You don't have to prove your worth through endless action. Just being here, as you are, is enough. If you ever feel like no one is listening, I want you to remember this. I'm here. These words may not solve every challenge, but they're meant to remind you that you're not alone. You matter, in ways that no one else could ever replicate. The world needs you, not as a perfect version of yourself, but as the unique person you already are. Think about how you'd treat a friend in their hardest moments, with patience, understanding, and love. Now, try offering that same kindness to yourself. It's not about excusing mistakes or avoiding growth, but about creating a space where you can heal without pressure, as hard as it might be. Learning to be gentle with yourself is one of the most powerful gifts you can give. The truth is, life isn't about getting everything right. It's about finding meaning in the little things, even when the bigger picture feels unclear. Notice the small moments, the warmth of a sunrise, the sound of laughter, or the quiet comfort of simply sitting still. These details might not seem life-changing, but they hold a beauty that's easy to miss in the rush of everything else. If today feels overwhelming, take it one breath at a time. Tomorrow doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. There's no need to have all the answers right now. What matters is that you keep going, even if all you can do is take one small step forward. You are irreplaceable. The world is better because you're in it, even if it doesn't always feel that way. So, take care of yourself. In whatever way you can today, you're worth the effort. And no matter what, I'll be here, reminding you that you're never truly alone.